every time you work out, you're actually increasing your circulation just generally, and your brain likes that. In fact, the area of the brain that's most sensitive to exercise is really important for helping us stay on track, make new memories, and helping us bounce back and adapt to changes. So all of that adaptability is being fostered when you're doing something that really gets your blood pumping, and exercise fits that bill for sure.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, hosted by Chrissy Van. Together, we're uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. It's time for our fourth edition of Exercise Snacks Bite-Size Science, where we explore the latest science and research directly with the scientists and researchers themselves. Brought to you by All-in-One Super Blend, the complete nutrition drink with a full supply of daily vitamins and minerals and 2 full servings of vegetables. Delicious, all-natural, and plant-based. It's superfood for superhumans. Visit allinonesuperblend.com. On today's episode, we welcome Dr. Karlie Intelkofer, a neuroscientist who focuses on the benefits of exercise for brain health and well-being. As the global wellness researcher at Matrix Fitness, Dr. Intelkofer integrates evidence-based practices into exercise programming and develops initiatives that support an enduring habit of physical activity. On the podcast, we'll explore how exercise builds psychological resilience, the dose-dependent relationship between fitness levels and the prevalence of mental health disorders. Plus, we'll see how regular exercise not only enhances our mental fortitude, but also significantly diminishes the risk of various mental health disorders, offering insights into this vital aspect of well-being. Before we get to it, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new episodes of the ATFW podcast every Wednesday featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. Plus, new episodes of Exercise Snacks Bite-Size Science every other Monday. This Wednesday, we'll be welcoming Lynn and Victor Brick of the John W. Brick Foundation to continue our mental health conversation. I'm your host, Chrissy Van, and this is ATFW. So at time of recording, we're coming off the heels of the holidays, a time that's filled with excitement, joy, social gatherings, ringing in of 2024, goals on the horizon, big plans, time of reflection. And then we roll into the third Monday of January, and that is deemed Blue Monday, the most depressing day of the year. And there's a couple of facets that go into that. The holiday bills are rolling in. Generally, the weather is cold and gloomy, depending on where you're joining us. Social gatherings have wound down. And so that can take a tremendous toll on mental health in an area that we know as a society has been a challenge anyway. So Dr. Karlie Intelkofer joining me. So happy to have you here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit, we heard in the introduction there an overview, but tell me more about your area of research and why this was an area that you decided to niche down and focus on.
Yeah, great question. Well, when I was young, I had a passion for sports and moving around, let's put it that way. And I actually noticed that I felt so much better in season when I was young versus out of season when I would, get home and have nothing to do but watch TV, maybe do some homework. So what I learned from that personal experience is that something was going on in my brain and how I felt, and it led me to get my doctorate in neuroendocrinology, how hormones affect the brain. And then I moved into the field of how exercise affects the brain in my own personal research. So I've been connected to that molecular research for some time, and it's been wonderful to be able to see all the research validating some of the findings that we were onto in the last few decades. So it's really been a growing area of research, and since it's got some personal relevance to me, it's been easy to stay passionate about it.
Well, and I think it's never been more relevant. Like now as a society, it's become a huge topic of conversation. I think the stigma around mental health has gone way down. People are willing to have the conversation, but unfortunately, it's also in tandem with a time where I think if we took the temperature check of where our mental health is at, especially coming out of those pandemic years, we've seen things take a tremendous dip. So heading into 2024, what are we seeing? And I know it's hard to speak to an entire populace. You're based in the United States, so let's take it from a North American perspective.
Right. Well, there's a lot of different indicators that we can look at that give us hints about how folks are doing. Of course, we know the pandemic years, those lockdowns, that had a major toll on a lot of individuals. But in general, you're right. Things are a little bit lower in terms of stigma. So people are a little bit more open about disclosing. And to that end, we find that somewhere between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3 North Americans seek help for something related to mental health. Now, mental health is involved in a lot of things, so it's hard to get firm numbers on how many people are depressed or how many people are anxious. But the truth is, there's some clear indicators that we're not out of the woods when it comes to mental health. For one, we can look at rates of prescription medications, things like antidepressants or anxiolytics, which are things that help us reduce anxiety. We know that those medications are being prescribed at historic rates still. In fact, it's like 1 in 8 or 1 in 7 North American women is on an antidepressant right now. Now, those can be used for off-label uses, so it's not always the best to look at what meds people are taking, but even just in surveys that people complete, they are looking for ways to feel good, and they're very open about their struggles. Now, one of the things you're probably well aware of because of the date, financial struggles are a big factor. And what we're finding is that as the cost of living continues to creep up, we're seeing more financial stress, and that's adding to people's woes. That's adding to people's mental health burden. And lastly, and this is a dark topic, but it's relevant, we can look at things like the suicide rate. It's no secret that folks who take their own lives are often those who struggle the most with mental health challenges. And what we see, unfortunately, is that year over year, that statistic of how many people are killing themselves continues to climb. So as an example, 2023 numbers are slightly higher in terms of percentages than 2022 numbers. And that adds up to some big impacts that ripple through communities. We have about 50,000 Americans that take their lives each year. And that's just the ones that on their death records actually indicate that suicide was the cause of death. And then in Canada, it's 4,500 or so are taking their lives each year. So it's a serious topic, and it definitely merits a closer look at what we can do to help everyone feel a little better. Because like I said, even losing one person who's distantly related to you or one person who you hear about on the news, it really does have a ripple effect through society. And it hurts all of us when those around us are in that much distress, for sure.
Well, when you speak to those numbers, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are hearing that and either know someone or know of someone. And so that ripple effect is very evident in our lives. And so we have to start thinking of more solutions to support each other because we're a society that's more connected than ever and disconnected at the same time. So I know there was a Forbes survey that came out just as we were heading into 2024, and it was talking about people's resolutions for this year. And number one was physical fitness. We know it's the number one resolution every year, but I believe it was number 3 spot was mental health. And people wanted to see improvements in their mental health. So, talk to me a little bit about the correlation between the two, because I think industry wise, we're saying it more. Exercise is medicine, it aids in your physical and mental health. But what does that actually mean? What are we doing? We know we work out, we feel good. Why?
Well, there's a number of different angles, right? So some of it is just physiological. For a long time, we were taught, like back in the 90s, that your brain functions and your bodily functions, like your muscles and your bone, all of that was somewhat separate in the way that it was taught. But what we're finding from the research is that your nerves are running throughout your body, right? How your muscles are doing is reliably communicated to your brain. So this interconnection, pulling the body back together, or not these siloed body parts, it all works together, has really been helpful for research. It helps us understand that while going for a short walk can help you feel better within minutes, how could it be that effective? Well, you're changing a lot of systems when you exercise. So the first thing is, we no longer view the brain and the muscles as two isolated things. They work together, they talk together. And when the muscles are doing well, when they're growing, when they have a challenge to rise to, when they're adapting, there's a lot of changes that happen in the brain at the same time. So some of it's just physiological, just using your muscles causes an increase in circulation. It's good for your brain. You get these alerting hormones, things that help you feel a little better. And then, of course, there's these psychological aspects that come into that. Oftentimes when we're at the gym, we feel like we're following through on our healthy intentions. We're literally doing something, taking action in the service of our long-term health goals, in the service of our daily goals of taking better care of ourselves. So there's also that psychological aspect of I'm feeling more confident because my body's moving better, or I'm feeling more competent because I'm actually following through with something I said I was going to do, that I wanted to do. So there's a lot of those benefits as well. But then we can even look at studies where people don't even break a sweat, where they do some very light form of exercise. And, the physiologist inside of me would be like, well, wait, how is a gentle workout so effective? But again, there's all these different mechanisms at play. And some of it is that people are exhausted and they may need light workouts occasionally to just brighten their mood and feel a little better for the rest of the day. They don't always need a grueling, exhaustive workout, which sometimes, when you look at Instagram fitness influencers, it makes it look like you're never working out hard enough. So I think there's just a number of different parallel benefits happening at once. And that the end result is that you get done with your workout, you step out of the shower and you're like, I feel better. And I don't know about you, but that's really what keeps me coming back to it. It's not this promise that someday in my 70s and 80s, I'm going to have some health advantage. It's that immediately after my workout, I feel a sense of accomplishment, a sense of relief. I sleep better. That shower's never felt better than when I'm all sweaty and really exhausted. So it's kind of a combination of things, but we know for sure that we can measure the changes in the brain. We can measure the changes in mood, and we can live brighter lives, happier lives, higher quality of life experiences when we stay active.
Well, and I really like that you highlight that the benefits of the day that you go and do it, because it is exactly that. We all have different goals or whys for maybe what got us into the gym in the first place, but it is about the now and the moment and what it does in that day. And I know I had a guest earlier this year and she went on this huge fitness journey after some health complications. And for her, she's like, I have more patience with my child. I have more energy to play with her that day. And those were the immediate benefactors that were bringing her back into the gym space that day. I know you mentioned some of those psychological effects, but I know some of your research has touched on that psychological resilience. So, what is that? And how does it impact our lives if we are making fitness a regular habit?
Right. So every time you work out, like I mentioned before, you're actually increasing your circulation just generally, and your brain likes that. In fact, the area of the brain that's most sensitive to exercise is really important for helping us stay on track, make new memories, and helping us bounce back and adapt to changes. So all of that adaptability is being fostered when you're doing something that really gets your blood pumping, and exercise fits that bill for sure. So when we think about resilience, it's really about keeping someone adaptable so that they can view their circumstances in a positive light and they can come up with solutions and stay on track. It's easy to feel like giving up if you're overwhelmed. It's easy to feel like pulling back from life's challenges when you feel frustrated or like it's too much. But with something like exercise, you're getting a daily dose of challenge that by and large you have a lot of control over. So that's an opportunity for you to, build a relationship with exercise that actually makes you feel like you're more in control of life. It's kind of like regaining a sense that what you do is going to have some tangible outcome, some benefit to you in the end, right? So I think that there's a lot of factors at play, but in addition to the brain changes that we see, through different brain imaging techniques, we know that people just say they feel like they can handle their stress better on the days that they work out. And to that point, you mentioned patience. For parents, for couples who are co-parenting, for individuals in fast-paced jobs, patience is really important. Not only patience with others, but also patience with yourself, that kind of self-kindness on the inside. And, a lot of athletes are really incredible at pushing themselves, but some of them are pushing themselves with these harsh inner narratives, these more judgmental phrases. I have a feeling some of the listeners who are probably more motivated than average might know what I'm talking about, or you may almost be like the mean coach in your head that you no longer have, but you're still simulating it. So exercise can also help to quiet that inner narrative that's a little harsh. It can help you kind of take the edge off of the insults that you got going on, or the harsh statements you have going on, especially if, as life changes, you're going to encounter challenges that are hard, not just beyond like, oh man, my pants are too tight, I have to go buy a new wardrobe, but, really difficult things from like switching jobs and divorce. And, there's some major changes that people's lives go through in addition to losing loved ones and losing friends. So I think that having exercise as a regular habit in your daily routine, that's almost like being armed with something. It's almost like you have a little extra capacity, because indeed you are voluntarily challenging yourself on the regular and building up that resilience, that ability to bounce back, that I can do this workout by workout. So I think it's something that accumulates, and you get an immediate benefit on the day you actually follow through with your healthy intention.
Yeah, I think there were probably a lot of nodding heads talking about that negative critic, especially, we have even up to the highest levels of the fitness industry that join us on this podcast. But I think even the most practiced minds sometimes need the reminder, because the brain, if you don't take those time to observe those thoughts and let them pass, really can kind of take over and continue to feed you on that loop. When it comes to dose dependent fitness, because I mean, everything you're highlighting there, I think just amplifies the importance of our fitness industry as a whole. And I think they're doing a good job of it right now and changing that message of like that no fit, low fit, making the barriers that once were perceived walking in those gym doors come down quite a bit. Before it was all about get shredded weight loss. The advertising was really heavy in that realm, and they really are taking this softer approach because we have this broader understanding. And it really can go a long way if you are integrating an active lifestyle, because I know some of your research kind of looks at the relationship between dose dependent fitness and the prevalence of mental health disorders. And I
Right.
know there's a little bit of a difference sometimes when we talk about mental illness versus mental health. So maybe just dive into a little bit of that space.
Well, the truth is with mental illness and mental health, that all of us at some point in time in our lives will face the symptoms of mental illness. I know that sounds like a really broad statement, and there's some people out there right now who have not maybe faced any clinical levels of symptoms, but still, you know what the symptoms are. It's just that it can get to a point where it really interferes with quality of life. It interferes with work productivity, with relationships, with sleep. And at those stages, it may get to the point where you need to see a professional, which is always a good idea, or to be on a certain medication. And many of them are effective. We know that exercise is extremely potent, but I don't want people to come away with any sense that exercise can replace those medications, because I've had people mention that to me after talks or whatever. Oh, I want to quit taking this and just do this. And it's like, coordinate this with your doctor first and foremost. But yes, the truth is that exercise is like medicine, in that with greater doses of exercise adherence, we see greater protection offered. And again, it's not a cure, but it's more like protection. It's like another layer of armor. Now, yes, there are people who exercise regularly and can develop depression, but we find that their risk of developing depression is so much lower. And one simple way to think about it is that in order to have anxiety or depression, the two most common stress-related mood disorders, you usually start out with like a prodrome, like your mood is really low for a little period of time before you're actually clinically depressed, where it's a very major impact in your life. Similarly with anxiety, you may notice right before bed, you have repetitive negative thoughts. You may notice, wow, why can't I sleep? This is weird. I usually don't have insomnia. Something's on your mind, right? So usually there's these like prodrome symptoms before it's full-blown clinical mental illness, right? So with exercise, it's kind of like you're investing in yourself, like putting money in your piggy bank every day. You're investing in yourself to kind of bolster your reserves, so that when you do hit a major struggle, or you do have a biological change in your brain that sets you up for one of these mental illnesses, you have more options available to you, perhaps more adaptability available to you, perhaps you have a better chance of staying out of that clinical degree of mental illness. So there are people with full-blown mental illness who are actually managing it quite effectively. You wouldn't maybe even know, because a lot of people don't disclose exactly what they've got going on, but exercise can be one of those coping tools that helps them stay on track, that helps them, keep that positive self-regard going, which can be hard to keep going, as we get older and older, as we face different challenges, etc. So I look at it like it's a resiliency factor. And in general, we find that the highest levels of fitness, the people who have the best lungs, blood vessels, they're ready to go. The highest levels of fitness have the greatest protection against developing clinical grade mental illness.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to it from the scientific side, but I do find, especially if you are one of those individuals, you are almost in a deeper state of listening with yourself. And I don't know if it's because you're so connected in body through those experiences or moving through it, but that deeper state of listening aids, I feel, when you have those little nudges of like, oh, something feels off, or I don't feel like, or you do, if let's say your anxiety, like if I ever feel it, it's always in more my solar plexus kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, I have this feeling here. And you get a little bit more curious about it. And I think it just probably helps broaden our scope of awareness to catch us when we perhaps are shifting into one of those states of mind. Because exactly as you say, we think we're all in control of this life. There are surprises. It's always the things that happen randomly on a Tuesday that really knock us off our feet, not the things that we generally are planning for to happen. So it does give you that little bit of extra armor when you are having to navigate those unforeseen challenges. Another element that I think it aids so much with, and this plays into mental health, I believe it was May of last year where the Surgeon General deemed a loneliness epidemic. And yes, we are allowed to gather now, but I think our social dynamics have really changed. We are so ingrained in our social media spaces, online distractions. So, how can gyms and health clubs really be a facilitator of improving our social wellness? And how does that tie into our overall mental health?
That's a great question. Just to highlight something that you mentioned, because I think this is such a huge topic, and you just used a perfect term to describe it. You used the term embody. I like to think about embodied cognition all the time. And I know not everyone out there is a neuroscientist, but what that term means, embodied cognition, it's feeling how your body feels from the inside out. And it's the recognition that what your body goes through, the challenges, the tribulations, the recovery periods, the relaxing periods, all of that feeds into how our brains are thinking. And so this may seem like a real simple concept, but believe it or not, there were experts 30 years ago that fought this concept. Anyone out there who's a parent can probably see this in their kids when they're playing, when they're running, when they're screaming with joy. Their brains are on thinking completely different thoughts than when they are being forced to sit still, for example. But it also helps us recognize that there's a lot of people out there with physical pain who are recovering from injury or may have an inflammatory condition. And that can put such a damper on how they feel day to day, on their experience of life, on their decision to respond with patience versus a negative comment, on their decision to take a comment as something that they need to be defensive about versus something that they can accept and move forward with grace. I mean, there's so much going on with embodied cognition, but embodied cognition is more about the individual, right? And I think that what we're getting to here is the growing recognition of how important gym visits are for how we relate to others and how we see ourselves in terms of the whole community. So yeah, I think that social health is another really big topic right now, just being socially healthy, having relationships that help add meaning to your life. And really, gyms and other fitness facilities, these are places where we can come together with others who aren't exactly like us, but who we know we already share something in common with, a desire to keep improving, a goal of trying to, keep working on things that make us feel good, on working on our health or working on a personal health goal. So I can speak from personal experience, having moved quite a bit. It's hard to integrate yourself into a new community, and not everyone wants to go on Bumble to meet their best friend or online, or not everyone wants to be at a bar to make new friends, although those are all great places, don't get me wrong. And then with this drop of church attendance and this drop of physical locations where we can meet strangers, gyms, for better or for worse, are absolutely wonderful for someone if they're trying to integrate themselves into the community. Now, this doesn't mean some people don't go there with their headphones in, with their, their
That's
cell
me.
phones out. close out the world and get on the treadmill. That's okay too. But that still has a social element because when you walk in the door, you're greeted. You're greeted by someone who's friendly, who's welcoming you there. And they want you there, trust me. Even if that front desk staff is a little quiet or a little introverted, they want you there. You are not only the reason that their facility exists, you're the lifeblood. You're really what is the proof that every day them showing up to work is helping others. So even if you're just barely social at the gym, it has some benefits for your social health and it can help you feel less alone. One of the downsides of COVID, of course, is that we got used to being kind of shut in, and I'm guilty of that. I know the transition to more work from home has been kind of unusual. It's like, do I need to put on real pants today? There's new questions in the
Even
loop.
I have real pants, but they're stretchy.
Mine are stretchy too, truth be told. So I think that it's something that can help heal communities because you can go somewhere where you have almost instant camaraderie with most of the people who walk through that door. And you can't say that about a lot of other places. I mean, I don't feel connected to others when I see them at the grocery store if I don't know who they are. I don't feel like we're all in this together. And yet somehow, when I get through a group exercise class, which is a fabulous social environment, right? If I get through even a hard workout and there's someone next to me sweating away, I feel like we went through something together.
So true.
So there are environments that can be great sources of positivity, no matter what's going on in your life. And I know just myself having suffered losses or after a move, when I felt a little tender or a little vulnerable, the fitness facility has always been there to welcome me back, from state to state or city to city, you name it. They're always there and they've got pretty wonderful hours. So it kind of helps squash any excuses I have for why I can't get a workout in. So yeah, so I've been grateful to the fitness industry. And that's one reason why I decided to join the fitness industry, working with Matrix Fitness as one of the groups that I help represent.
Yeah, and I know that you do a lot of research on their behalf exactly in this niche because mental health is something that they've really been championing as well. And it is because of our personal experiences, I think we land here because I wouldn't be talking about the fitness industry either if it hadn't transformed my life in a similar capacity. And I think what people need to recognize as well is that, yeah, there's the old adage, gyms are super busy for the first few weeks of the new year. We know statistically people's adherence does go by the wayside, but that isn't the goal for a gym. They don't want that. They want to be welcoming you back. Ultimately, I mean, when you look from a business side, you then become champions and little billboards for their business to a capacity, but it's also that space where you do have that feeling with everyone. We've accomplished something. And when I've seen any new goer in these last couple of weeks, even though I am headphones in, I'm a very social person. So it's my decompress, quiet space, but I'm
Sure.
silently championing, like, oh, yeah, good for you. Like, get it. Like, it really is this positive environment. And I think it's because we're all doing something for ourselves that is hard and it is a choice. But it's like choose your hard. And I think we are seeing more and more repercussions if we aren't choosing that for ourselves. We do have, unfortunately, very high numbers of people living sedentary lifestyles. And generally, the older we get, we're more looped into our habits and it gets harder
Mhm.
to start something new. So I think from an industry side, really getting this message out has been so imperative because the light bulb is happening for people that there is this connection. So kind of in closing, when it comes to the research side, what's exciting you heading into 2024? Or what areas are you really looking to explore and focus on?
Moving forward, there's a lot of new research about how exercise is helping us feel better. And I have to admit, I'm a nerd and I'm into the weeds with the molecules and all the things that are changing. But really, what I want to do is I want to communicate those findings in a more clear way so we can motivate more people to move. Because this is something that happens every year. We take surveys about how active we are, and those survey numbers do not match our actual fitness levels or our actual health outcomes very closely. And what that tells me is that there's a lot of people who have these healthy aspirations, but they may not necessarily be following through as often as they need to. And when we were talking about exercise dose, part of the dose is influenced by frequency. How frequently or how often do you actually go to the gym? That's a really major target, maybe even above exercise intensity or exercise duration. Do you go regularly? And the reason why is because it's kind of like showering or brushing your teeth. You need a regular dose of it to get the full mental health benefits. That once a month is not enough for sure. It's more like 2 to 4 times a week is probably optimal if you want to feel your very best. So in any way that I can help, my passion is really to help the fitness industry recruit a wider variety of individuals and be more welcoming to more people who need that outlet. Because I know it's something that I need. It sounds like it's something that you need. And just for the audience, Chrissy is incredibly strong. I saw her at a conference and I was shocked. And Chrissy, what rank did you get for strength among all the women in the whole conference?
I believe I took first.
Yes, she took first. She's very modest. So she is someone who is an expert at helping herself stay motivated with exercise. And I just want to make sure that whatever that special sauce is that gets you off your couch, that gets you to lace up your shoes, that we can spread it more widely so that more people can get involved at all ages, at all stages of life, whether or not they've got issues that they've got to work around, because most of us do as we get older. Surprise, surprise. It's just about trying to get that experience elevated so that people take away a positive experience and want to go back for more.
Well, I have to say exactly that. I did meet you. It was the Fitness Technology Summit. And I know that people talk about passion all the time, and it's perhaps an overused word, but it leaps through the camera. Even when we were just sitting at a white tablecloth table across from each other and engaging in conversation, I can just feel it from you. And so I appreciate all the work that you're doing, because at the end of the day, it's exactly that this type of data, this type of research, or, in your own words, nerding out on this and finding ways to make it digestible for the rest of us is something that's propelling this message forward. So thank you for being such an advocate for the benefits of fitness. Far beyond the physical benefits. We've got the science to back it up, and I really look forward to seeing what you come out with throughout the rest of this year. We'll be following for sure.
All right. Well, thank you. If anyone wants to follow me on LinkedIn, I'm Dr. Karlie Intelkofer with Matrix Fitness and with Trio Wellness. I will be launching a matrix-based website along with many other researchers where we're going to try to put together a lot of different angles that are simplified for the operator, for fitness professionals in particular. And that way they can kind of, get the takeaway without maybe having to read the whole, original research article, because we know that that's not everyone's cup of tea. It happens to be my cup of tea. So yeah, I'm very
our
grateful.
Advantage. Well, I hope you don't have too much shoveling ahead, but if so, hopefully you enjoy the workout part of it.
Yeah, I am sweaty. That's why I do deadlifts. I always remind myself of that, is because the shoveling can be very serious in Wisconsin.
That is true. I hope that you have, I don't know when we'll cross paths, perhaps I'm sure through this year at this point, but in the meantime, thank you for everything that you do, sincerely from myself. And I know you're so busy, so I really, really appreciate you taking the time with me.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Chrissy Van. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World, your fitness, your way. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.